Welcome, everyone, to Women of the Military podcast. I'm really excited to have a special guest here this week, Robert Irvine. I'm sure you've seen him on Food Network, or maybe you've seen this work he's done in the military community, but he's here this week, and we're really excited to hear his story. So thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Amanda, for having me.
So let's start with, why did you decide to join the military? We're going way, way back, but this is how I like to start all my interviews.
Well, that's a great question, and it's a simple one. My father was in the Army. My brother was in the Army. I didn't want to join the Army at 11 years old. I was doing home economics because there's 30 girls and me. Thought it was a good chance to get a girlfriend. I made my first quiche Lorraine. I got interested in cooking. I was a Sea Cadet at that time also. So I would go away to bases, naval bases, Marine bases on the weekends, warships. Fell in love with cooking, fell in love with the Navy, ended up joining the Navy at 15 and a half years old. My mother was not a good kid at school. My mother was going to work one day. I waved like a good little son and then came back and drank all my dad's beer with my friends. She called the house. The next minute, I'm in the recruitment office. So the military at a young age for me was amazing. Number one, because I'd lived that life from 11 years old to 15 and a half in the Sea Cadets. I knew the uniform, I knew the bases, I knew the protocols. I knew, I was in the Sea Cadets, I was a petty officer, won many awards. It was a natural fit for me. I didn't want to join the Army. I call it cannon fodder. I wanted to go on the Navy. And I used to say, travel the world and drop bombs on people. Which is kind of funny at the time because we ended up in the Falklands not long after that. But that's how I joined the military. Again, great. My dad was in the Army. My brother was in the Army. So a heavy focus on service. And I continue that service.
Yeah. So it sounds like you have a tradition of military in your family, and so that led you to the Navy. And then what was your career field when you were in the Navy?
Well, I was so stupid, and I mean that most literally. And the only things I enjoyed at school were history, woodwork, and sports, and home economics. So when I took my English and math test, which is very different to MEPS here in the United States, is basically an English test 1 to 5 and a math test 1 to 5. I got 5.5, being the lowest in both of them, by the way. And the recruiter said to me, well, we've got some good news for you. You're in the Majesty's Royal Navy. Not so good news. You're going to be a cook. And I went, yes, because that's exactly what I wanted to do anyway. I didn't want to fly planes. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want, food was my first love. So that's what I did. I did my first 6 weeks of basic training in Cornwall. And I never forget, because I was the youngest in the group of 12 people in the dormitory and in my class. And my boss, my chief, active duty chief at that point, said to me, I'm going to fail you because you're not a team player. And I said, what do you mean? My kit's perfect. My bed's perfect. I was a cocky kind of kid, but I was right. It was perfect. He said, yeah, but you're not a team player. So the first time he got me was I had a hair on my chin, which is unusual because I don't get hair anyway today at 59 years old. But he made me shave in the parade ground with a cold bucket of water and a rusty razor. So I was cut up to pieces. The second one was, you're not a team player. So at 2:00 in the morning, I decide to put some of my own rules in place. I tipped the 11 other guys out of their beds at 2:00 in the morning, who were all older, 23, 24, 25, a lot bigger than me. And I kind of laid the law of the land and showed them how to clean the boots, fold their uniforms, press the uniforms, clean and polish their boots, make the beds, where the drill instructor would look, all those kind of things. And I did that every night for a week at 2:00, to the point that they knew it was going to be, set their alarms at 2:00. But they all passed with 100%. And he came up to me afterwards and said, now you're a team player. And I think that stuck with me my whole career.
I love that story. That's so cool. And to be at such a young age and to be able to help, those senior to you, like in age. And I
Mhm.
feel like that would be intimidating, but you were like, I gotta get out of here.
Well, it's been the same throughout my whole career. The youngest executive chef running a multi-billion-dollar company. We have 8,000 employees. We have 13 companies. It's the same mentality goes today as it was, how many other years ago when I was 15 years old. I'm 59. So, it's the same. I haven't changed.
And how long were you in the Royal Navy?
A total of about 16 years. And I say about because I had 3 years of reserve duty, right? And then I left the country without getting a pension because I came to the United States on a cruise ship. By the way, the pension wasn't worth anything, so it didn't really matter. But about 16 years in total.
Okay. So you had quite the experience before you made the leap. And
I got to a rank that I couldn't do anything else. I cooked for pretty much every head of state in the free world. There was nothing exciting to me anymore.
it's interesting because I did some research and I couldn't find a lot of information about your military experience, but I could find a little
You
bit.
won't because in the United States they don't. Even Food Network did the same thing.
Right.
You can pull my disengagement logs, but they don't really tell you. It just tells you service times and whatnot. But
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really interesting. Was there anything that you
I'll give
learned
you
while
something.
you were
All right, I'll give you something that I don't share with anybody just because I can. Where are we? Where are we? Pictures. So this was my first job after basic training. Now let me see if I can do this. See if you can see who that is. Oh, not that. Where are we? Sorry. It's kind of awesome actually. Do you know who that is there? Oh, let's go up there.
No.
That's the Prince and Princess of Wales.
Oh, wow.
And that's me right in the middle here
Wow.
at
That's
15
so
years
cool.
old. So that was my first job on board the Royal Britannia.
Wow. So you have a lot of crazy stories.
Yeah. It's so funny because if you imagine 30 years ago, we didn't have iPhones. So every time I would tell somebody, they would say, "Oh, you're lying, you're lying, you're lying." I said, "Well, no, it's real. It's in my, documents." But I had never had pictures. And then 2 years ago, November, I got 68 pictures sent to me by the original photographer on board the Royal Yacht because he was very ill and wanted me to have them. And that was kind of vindication for somebody saying, "Oh, you didn't do that." So, well, yeah, I did. I'm right there.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool. That's awesome. I love seeing the history and I love hearing about different experiences in the military. I mean, that's why I have a podcast. But it's really cool.
Yeah, I've been on warships. I went to the Falklands at a young age. Worked with flag officers, worked with admirals and generals and those kind of things. But there's one thing the military teaches you is teamwork, selfless service, loyalty, integrity, honesty, all the things that I wish that we had in this country today. And I'm using this as a broad stroke, and I really shouldn't, but I'm going to. We don't have that from the younger generation today. And I was in Normandy with the president, heads of state, 20 heads of state, and 168 World War II veterans. And what was amazing to me, Amanda, was Point de Hoc, which is where the invasion started, where Prince Charles, or King Charles, I should say, and the Prince of Wales and the president spoke. And right behind that is a town called St. Margulies. It's the first town, and I can show you a picture of today, what it was then in 1944 and what it was now. And we pushed 168 World War II veterans in wheelchairs into that town. with probably 20,000 people from the ages of 7 to maybe 60. But ages 7 to 60 were all wearing GI Joe American uniforms, encampments, and they fixed up the old Jeeps, the half tracks. It was absolutely mind-boggling to me to see the love and the adoration of these young and old French people who were liberated, most of which, there were some older ones there, obviously, but we're talking 80 years ago.
Right.
But the young kids adoring the American troops. It was unbelievable. And I still talk about it today because I wish America had that. We don't.
Yeah. When I was deployed to Afghanistan, we were with the French, and we did a ceremony on, I think it was, I don't remember which ceremony it was, but they were talking, I think, I'm like, maybe it was Veterans Day, but I wasn't in country, so it wasn't that. But they did this whole ceremony about how America came in and saved, oh, that's the picture.
So
And they
that the
saved,
top there is 1944 and the
yeah.
bottom is 2024.
Wow.
It's identical, except the
Yeah.
troops.
Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
so that you're sorry, I interrupted you there, but
It's okay, but we were with the French, and they did this ceremony, and they were talking about how America came in and saved France and all these things, and I was like, even as an American, I didn't have the same appreciation as the French did for what we did during World War II, because that was very real to them, and I mean, the people who were doing the ceremony were around the same age as me, but their admiration and their, I guess, their awe and understanding of, like, what the World War II veterans did really kinda changed my perspective just being around them and hearing, like, how it changed America
it's,
and
it's,
how it changed
it's,
France.
it's unbelievable. 13 of those 168, we took 68 on American Airlines, they're my partner, and Delta took 100 with EMTs and doctors and caregivers and all those kind of things. But 13 of that 168 were crammed onto a stage in the American cemetery where President Macron gave 13 legions of honor to these young men. I'm talking 97 to 107 years old, young men. And not one of them would sit in their wheelchair. They had to stand. Oh my, it was, talk about tear-jerking history moments. It was unbelievable. And we put them all on a Sunbelt Rentals, are great friends of ours, and they made a bamboo walkway, basically, so we can get the wheelchairs onto the sand. We give them all a rose and said, hey, a lot of you don't know each other. Here's a rose. When I say go, one after each other, throw the rose and make a thought or a prayer or do something. It was the most moving time because all these 168, including one of the original Rosie derivatives, by the way, started crying and started talking to each other next to each other. I thought it was like a miracle on the sand. And there was a young man, 104 years old, C-24 pilot. He dropped 36 bombs, more bombs, but 36 missions, and never set foot in France. And he was telling me every bomb they dropped, where it was, because the bomb holes are still there, and what happened on the day. And sure enough, I came back and researched all that stuff, and it was unbelievable. And I'm still in awe of that greatest generation to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we need to talk about their stories, and I know there's been a lot of work to capture them because I think it's just amazing what they did, and yeah, it's so powerful.
Right. We try.
Yeah. So let's get back to your story. I like that detour, but so how did you go from being in the Navy to being a Food Network star? Is there like a big long story, or did it happen pretty
No,
quickly?
I left the military. I played soccer for 2 years in Warsaw, in the West Midlands in England. I got bored, so I would play football on Wednesday and Saturday, and then the other days I would work in the hotel in the kitchen that the team owned. I got bored. I found a newspaper ad in the was it the Times or something in London for cruise ships. I applied for it, went up to London, had an interview, and the next week I was in Miami, working on a cruise ship, the executive chef of a cruise ship. I did that for 4 years, made a lot of money, hard work, loved it. Again, the youngest chef to run a cruise ship at that time. Then I applied for a job in Jamaica, which was to put 2 hotels together, the Renaissance Jamaica Grand and the Hyatt at Mallards Bay. I put them 2 hotels together. And then after a year of doing that, I got an opportunity to work in Atlantic City as executive sous chef for Trump Taj Mahal, #2. And I said I flew in there. I did the interview. I cooked for Trump. Loved it. Offered me a job. I said, well, I'm okay being this rank for a year, but if I'm not after this year the executive chef, I'm out of here. I stayed there 4 years, made a lot of money, made a lot of changes, made a lot of accolades for the property. I started buying futures for 4 casinos. Again, I'm 30 years old. So did that annoy a lot of older people? Absolutely. Who cares,
Right.
So that was kind of my biggest break, I suppose. Look, when you're in the military, and you know this yourself, the NCOs, non-commissioned officers, of which I was one, and you were one also, they run the military strategy-wise, even more than the chairman of Joint Chiefs, Secretary of Defense. They're on the ground. You've been to Afghanistan. I was there 18 times, and Iraq. You're on the ground making decisions based on your knowledge and intuition. And that's how I used my military service when I got outside. I felt so much smarter for being in the military than all those people that went to college and university that had no life experience. I
Yeah.
could bet on making a decision and knowing it's going to work. And I still do that today with Fortune 500 companies or Restaurant Impossible. So I think the military for me was such an amazing training ground. There's no other school of hard knocks in the world better than the military to learn a trade, be deployed, make best friends in the world that are loyal to you. There's no backstabbing like there is in the real world. Right? If you work in a company, somebody wants your job, they'll step all over you. In the military, we don't do that. There may be a few opportunities, some people that do that, but very rarely. You take your exams, you get on the list, and you get promoted when it's your time. Right? Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later. But I think that is an amazing springboard for anybody that wants a really good life. And I don't notice I said life, not money. Because we don't do things for money. But I mean, I made £500 a month, which was at that point about $800, right, when I first joined. Now I can't tell you what I make because it's ridiculous. But it was all those core values that I bring into all my 13 companies, and the people I employ, if they have the right mindset, service above self and people above self, then they're no good to me. Because they'll always go on one track and they'll believe in themselves instead of everybody. And I think, again, I go back to that's what the military did for me. I'm lucky to be surrounded by it, 345 days a year now. And I've been out, my God, 1996, I came to this country. So a long time.
Yeah. But it still impacts you today. I feel like the same way. The tools I learned in the military, even though I'm doing something totally different, I use those tools today in like how I lead and the different things that I do.
Were you what branch were you in?
The Air Force.
Okay. So I work with Joanna Bass,
Oh yeah.
who to me is one of the most amazing human beings and leaders on the planet. David Golfing, Dave Flossy. I mean, all these guys. So I work with the senior leadership in modernization right now. CQ Brown, Randy George, all these people that I think we've got right now, some of the best combined leadership across the joint force than we've ever had. And we've always had good people, but combined wise, I think amazing. CZ Lopez is on my board with our foundation. Joanna's on there. So, again, using those educational pieces and leadership pieces for the betterment of our kids. We're starting a program in Puerto Rico now with the National Guard that we're hoping to roll out to every state for young kids in the community, which is CZ's Lopez's his program, which is great. So, I think if you're lost, and I say this to anybody, male or female, if you're lost and you're not sure, join the military for 4 years. You'll be sure soon enough. You won't stay 4 years. Or I've never met. I was at MEPS in Fort Hamilton not long ago, and I swore in. I don't know. Well, watch the swearing in of 16 sailors, 17 Marines, 20 airmen. I still get choked up about it because they're the kids of our future that put a uniform on. And look, not everybody stays, but 90% of these kids stay and they become senior master sergeants and all these master gunnery sergeants. There's no better training ground for that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm really passionate about helping people join the military. I wrote a book called A Girl's Guide to Military Service, and it's for girls who are considering joining the military because I feel like it had such a positive impact on my life, and I'm in places that I never expected to be, and I attribute that a lot to the military. Or, I mean, there's other things too.
Drive. And your own drive. I mean, there's that too.
Yeah. So one of the things that when I was doing research is that you started a fresh kitchen inside the Pentagon, and then now you're moving outside of the Pentagon to other bases. So what inspired that idea, and why is it so important?
Well, there's not any good food in the military. And every general or commanding general will say, my food's great. No, it's not. I don't care which branch you're in. 2.0, all these other things that have gone on. No, I will tell you, I've been around the military for 20 plus years here in the United States. I've been through 4 chairmans, 4 secretaries, a lot of chiefs, a lot of sergeant majors of the army, master sergeants, all those kind of things. And actually, for 14 years, I've tried to change the food. So 9 years ago, just about 9 years ago, we put Fresh Kitchen in the Pentagon. It's totally evolving because, as you know, the Pentagon is probably a busier place than the White House is. More difficult to get into, by the way. Yeah. And I felt that if we started ahead, we can change the mindset of all, 28 to 36,000 people a day through that place. So from that, let me back up. So yeah, we started that about 9 years ago. And then Randy George, the chief of the army, was at JBLM as a 3-star, and he asked me to come and help him, which I did. Then he became Secretary of Defense's 4-star general, then became the chief of the army. And his legacy, and Christine Wormuth of the Secretary of the Army and Sergeant Major Weimer, said, look, we gotta do something. Not stop talking about this. Let's do it. So we opened in Fort Jackson 10 months ago, a grab and go right off the dining facility. It became an instant hit. Then we opened one in Andrews Air Force Base, and with APHES. So there are probably 200 of those style of restaurants going in across the Army and Air Force in the food courts. And then I am right now tackling with those people I just mentioned, the regeneration or modernization, because I use both words, of the dining facilities themselves, but also the nutritional pieces themselves. And it's so funny because the Secretary of the Army was doing a whole thing at AUSA yesterday talking about that very same thing. We're so used to buying food the way we buy food. We're so used to using recipe cards. Nobody reads the recipe cards. Nobody follows the specs. Nobody, and we don't have the people anymore. Just like the civilian world, the military world for cooks is a nightmare. So I'm in the process of that. I've become an expert with the Army right now. also working with the Navy and the Air Force, Marine Corps coming next, on how do we modernize. I think the whole force should have a single menu, not the Army, Marines,
Right.
but that menu rotates. Not only do dynasties look differently, I can't tell you about that because we just put an RFP out for that. But everyone will be the same, quote unquote, and it will rotate. Out of 7 stations, 1 station will rotate every week, so it's new. But with healthy, good, well-cooked food, not this garbage we're feeding our men and women now.
Yeah. No, that sounds really exciting. I think that's why it struck me when I was looking at it, because I was like thinking of the food that I ate on base at either the dining facility or even at the,
It
the food
is,
court. It's not good.
no matter where I go, Afghanistan, Iraq, Poland, Spain. I just came back from Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Same thing there. I took the chief of the Navy, the 4-star naval surface fleet, to Miami during Fleet Week to go on a cruise ship to show him how it should be done. I'm working with Secretary Del Toro to change the way we build ships, because it's not convenient. Yeah, the warships have become 21st, 22nd century with the armaments and all this and the shapes, but below deck it's 1940, 42.
Right.
We're living in mess decks. We can't, the watertight doors, and we're using small ovens instead of big ovens. There's a whole bunch of things that I'm fighting right now. And by the way, I like a good fight. I don't go in with a knife. I go in with statistics and numbers that are real. And I believe nothing is impossible, not just because of the shows, but I believe we can change it. And the way the leadership is right now, they want to change it. So it's getting done, which I love. And the Army's leading the way, by the way.
That's really exciting. That's so cool. That's so exciting that there's change happening and the leaders at the top, because the leaders at the top, like you said, at the bottom, we make all the decisions, but we need those leaders at the top to
Well, we
make.
need to get the money, right?
Right.
We need their permission, just like the H2F and just like 2.0 in the Air Force, and just like, the uniform changes, and now, the Army can wear white socks to work out in, and all these changes that make the life experience in the military a better experience for all, right? Not just a few. Special operations, they're very different because they're tempo and on what they do. But we have almost 2.7 million. That's a number, right, of our reservists and our National Guard that are 12-month deployed right now, right? And 1.4 active duty men and women. But we spend about $10 billion a year in obesity-driven disease, in pills, in 1.4 million. So if we can change the food, it's not just the food, it's the environment of the food. But it's also a resilience piece, because when you used to sit with a group of people and eat. Now these young kids want to go back to the back room, sit on their own and eat on their own. I want people to share the stories, because food is about hope and about excitement and about conversation. I know if Amanda's sitting there and I'm talking to her, I know if she's down or she's got something on her mind, or I can probe. But if you're sitting in your room, I can't see that. And I want that. I want that camaraderie back again. The food is crappy, but at least you have fun. You used to have fun mocking it and doing all those things. And if you're in Afghanistan or Iraq, it's like just throw it down your neck because you need something to eat to go and do your job.
Exactly.
We're past that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. And this is just one of the many things that you're doing for veterans. I was doing some more research, and I mean, you have Breaking Bread with Heroes, Reuniting the Brave, an annual military heroes charity golf tournament, Beats and Eats. You're doing so much for the military community. What drives you to do all these things for the military?
just before I got on this, I was looking at a video that was cut last year on what we call the Yump. It's where we took last year 25 people into Scotland, straight from Normandy, straight to Scotland to walk a 54-mile march. It was our first. I've done it 10 years in a row under the Armed Forces Foundation. I wanted to bring a team of 25. I wanted to see how this program would work for us. This year, we're taking 80 people. And what it is, I bought the village out, called Dunkeld. I bought every hotel in the village for this 4-day, 5-day period, every room. American will fly us there. We'll do the march. And it's 80 people from our team, then 100 from Armed Forces Foundation. So that's 180 Americans and 1,000 coalition wounded. And when I say that, it could be a double amputee, triple amputee, a 90% burn victim, which I have a 99% burn victim on my team, Mike. And what it does, and this is one of the programs, and I get the other one in a minute, but what it does, it gets people out of a room. You know, when you leave the military, you're lost. You kind of say, well, who am I now? You know, because the military was me for, 20 years, right? Or 30 years or whatever. Now I'm what? What is my purpose in life? And that's where we have the biggest suicide rate. So the Yump is one, reuniting the brave is another. So we have 750 1st Battalion, 2nd Marines, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. The snipers, we had 600 rescue swimmers just after that when I was in Scotland. So reuniting the brave is putting people back together. I mean, 750 1st Battalion, 5th Marines haven't seen each other for 20 years. I get them in San Diego for a week. Camp Pendleton, we put a huge cross, a memoriam for those lost and the Gold Star families. We had the commanding general and a priest pray, and we did a big dinner, and they get to grieve together because they haven't seen each other. 600 rescue swimmers, the same as the Yump. Breaking Bread for Heroes is attached to that. And then if you think twice a week, somewhere around the world, Afghanistan today, Iraq, Poland, Spain, Syria, twice a week, between 300 and 3,000 people we feed twice a week, somewhere around the globe. Food is the way to get to people to open up. It breaks down the barriers and allows us to talk. I mean, just a few. We have a dog program, and that's not only with the military, but also our first responders, our EMTs, our firefighters, police officers. I've got dogs on fire trucks. I've got dogs with individual people, that have post-traumatic stress, for Marines and Air Force people and Navy people. And, the Eisenhower in Israel had the dog, the first dog on a warship, to make the crew momentum and crew happiness better. And it did, by the way. Chowder Hill, one of the best captains I've ever come across in my life, and the one-star Miguez, who just left, really forward thinking about, okay, how do we, making cookies every day to give to the crew, social media, every one of our companies has sent stuff, whether it be, Milton, whether it be Helene, whether it be, you name it, COVID. We sent pallets and pallets and pallets of FitCrunch food to all these places for our doctors, nurses. There's a little girl whose father is a captain on the Eisenhower, who Kids for Cause, who contacted me and said, hey, we need to send some bars. We sent pallets of bars to Israel, to the Mediterranean for the ship. We did it for the Marine carrier, just the USS Wasp. Food is just, again, another way to make people happy under those arduous circumstances. You're getting, it used to be trifold mail when I was in the Navy. Now it's email. Now you've got all these, things and FaceTime. We didn't have that. We didn't have phones like that. So food and mail, or as we say, internet now, is changing the morale a lot. you know. So the
Yeah.
more we can change morale in the active force, the veteran community, our Medal of Honor recipients. I just came back from San Antonio doing the Medal of Honor. I do all the Medal of Honor dinners. We got Chattanooga next coming up. Again, honoring service.
Yeah, and I like the idea of like having a meal together and being able to talk about things because it is really hard to leave the military. I mean, I did 6 years and when I left, I was like, who am I? What do I do next? And I really struggled until I found, a new purpose and got connected with veterans, but there was that in between space where I didn't have that new community and I just went to a conference and at the end we had dinner together and it was just so nice to get to know each other, to hear each other's
Was
stories
that
and
in
just
Atlanta?
connect. Huh?
The Influencer Conference in
Yes,
Atlanta?
in Atlanta. Yes, you're right. Yep.
So we also run at the foundation, we run a mobility program, which is it's not only wheelchairs that stand up, iBots, but we also have bikes for double amputees. There are 1,500 double amputees on the war on terror. And we buy bikes at $25,000 each so they can go BMX or cross-country riding. They're 20 miles an hour each, 25 miles an hour. Bowhead bikes. I want to buy 1,500 of those bikes to get these people, they're my brothers and sisters and your brothers and sisters, out of these wars and getting them active. Because once you're around the tribe, and I call it the tribe, no matter what branch you're in, it's a tribe. Once you're with like-minded people, the endorphins go. You're like, oh, I'm back with my people, right?
Yeah.
Because not everybody's lucky enough to do a podcast. Although we have a podcast where we put rescuer and rescuee back together after, Dave Goldfein, who was shot down, we
Okay.
put him with his rescuer.
Wow.
It's just amazing. Podcasts are great because people can still stay connected to the service. I was on a podcast yesterday telling people, what can we do for veterans? Well, you can go to VA, find a veteran, go to YMCA, you can find veterans. You can make meals for veterans' houses. You can invite a veteran to your house, right? Cook him a meal or her a meal. Obviously you got to be careful and make sure it's all, safe.
Right.
But there's so much more that we can do for veterans if you want to. But you're going to want to do it.
Yeah.
But 345 days a year, that's my biggest want. Every time I get out of bed in the morning, it's not about making money. We need to make money. But it's about what can I do with that money to help somebody less fortunate than me that has put their service 6 years, 26 years. I've got a 30-year-old senior enlisted guy who was with a HR company I met in Abu Dhabi. He was there for 6 years. I met him there 3-4 times when I was in Abu Dhabi at Al Dafra. And he worked when he came out after 30 years and he hated it. And he called me desperate 2 weeks ago. I was like, Robert, what can I do? I'm like, you need to be around the tribe. Get on a plane on this day. Come around, see the events we're doing. We got Beats and Eats coming up November 4th, which is our big music and food event. It's a fundraiser. Lots of military, lots of surprises, which I'm really happy. We don't tell people what I'm going to do because I don't know it. And when I get there, I change it all the time. But we surprise people, and there's not a dry eye in the house. I'm going to tell you, including mine, because I love the surprise of giving something they need, but they don't expect.
Right. Yeah, no, being part of the community, I think that's the best advice you can give a veteran is to get connected with the veterans in your community because once you start talking to other veterans, you learn that there's a challenge and that you need each other. I mean, that's what I love about being on LinkedIn. I'm connected with so many veterans on LinkedIn and we have conversations about different things and even though we're not in the same room, we're still connected and it's really great.
I have a head of USO. He used to be head of USO in Philadelphia. He left the USO after probably 30 years. Started working at a veterans center, homeless veterans shelter. And Wawa does a big push there, making hoagies every year. I go up there, we deliver them to the veterans' houses. But now I started to do dinners there and the veterans' places. And it's amazing to put a hot meal in front of somebody and sit and talk about. And look, just because they're living on the street doesn't mean they're bad people. It means they're down on the luck. Some people want to live on the street, others don't. And you'll soon know those that don't. It's really interesting. And they're the ones I try and help. Some people just don't want their help. And veterans are very hard to ask for help because we're so proud and whatever. But I look up to anybody that has been in the military, been in an organization, and then goes a completely different, not a completely different way, but taking care of those that live on the street, that can't get a leg up, right? I don't want to give you money. I want to give you a hand up. I want to give you a leg up to get where you need to go. So we have a new program, and you're probably the first to hear about it, actually, because you didn't mention it, so you don't know. Right. It's called Let's Chow. It's where we put veterans who want to be in the food business into food trucks. They don't pay for it. We wrap it. We take care of it. We send them to college a couple of days a week where they live to get education. We give them the food truck. We let them do 4, 5, 6 months. And then when they finish that education, they understand their business, they understand their market. Then we put them in brick and mortar on bases, which is
bringing it all together.
Which is really cool. And there's a Jordan Foley, who was a JAG guy in the Pentagon, started it. Then asked me to take it over, which we've done, and we just completed it. Really excited for the growth of that education piece. Erie, Pennsylvania, there is what do you call it now? A seminary college, which we're about to put a flag in. The Mellon Carnegie family bought it and want us to start doing veterans schooling there for culinary, for computers, it's a whole campus. It's unbelievable. Got a little bit of work to do on it because it's been closed for three and a half years, but all those things are there, and that's our next step. How do we start to do that? Paint, paper, lighting. There's a beautiful church there, a beautiful gym and basketball court there, dormitories, everything's there. It's just got to be spruced up and cleaned up. But, that's our next, big thing. How do we start now getting these veterans to be trained into a different lifestyle than what they used to? Right. So, whether that be cyber technology, we're going to bring in all those kind of folks that can teach you and that have run that gambit. So exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Well, it's been so cool to hear a little bit of your story and to just be, I guess it's amazing to see all the things that you're doing for veterans, and there's more that you're doing. There's more and more coming. So It's really exciting to hear. And just thank you so much as a veteran for all that you're doing for the veteran community. I know we really appreciate it and we really need it. So it's really great. But I want to end the interview. You kind of gave a little piece of advice, but I always like to ask, what would you say to someone who's considering joining the military?
Do it. For me, and I've harped on about it, but for 4 years, when Ryan McCarthy was the Secretary of the Army, the last one before Christine, I was on the road with him for 4 years. Every food festival, Chicago, we put on a show. He would always beat me cooking, wearing a chef's jacket. He's not a chef. But it was so amazing for me to go around the country and see the different segments of our community. And the military is as diversified as any world, because I met people from Zimbabwe in the Army. I met people and I asked them, why did they join? So, well, we thought we could get a better life for ourselves, but also serve. And that's a great answer, by the way. I think that anybody that's interested in it, I think they should think what they want to do. Is it computers? Is it food? Is it, whatever it is? Um, it will be the best decision you ever make in your life. If, and I say if, you have a great attitude. Because if woe is me is you, the military is not the way to go. I was a bad kid. I went in, I came out, I made a fortune, which I'm giving back, by the way, but I made a fortune and I make eggs. I'm a guy that makes eggs. But I've had the opportunity to cook for every head of state in the free world. I get to travel with the President of the United States. Not this one, not the other one, all of them. The last 5. I get to do things that I would never have ever got to do. Sorry. I would get to do things I would never got to do if I wasn't in the military. I don't know where I would be now if I wasn't in the military. Because all those things I talked about, teamwork, travel, loyalty, respect, dignity, they teach you those skill sets that you may not have at home. I didn't have them. I was like me, and I came out now we. And it's amazing the opportunities that you get while you're in. And if you want to switch a job after a certain amount of time, you can do that. I don't know any other company that can do that. Right. The food's getting better, the housing's getting better, the pay's getting better. It will never be consumer with the outside world, and nor should it be, because you don't join the military to get paid. You join to serve. Then when you finish your service, you get out, and everything you've learned in the military, then you can 3 or 4 times what you make in the military. And I can tell you that for a fact. So I would say, if you have the opportunity, pick your branch. It will be life-changing for you. Life-changing.
Thank you so much for being a guest. Thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for that advice. I really loved it, and it was great to have you on.
Thank you.